I'm Amy.
I'm Wendell.
And I'm Patrick.
And
This is
Yes,
But Why?
Podcast.
Thank you, Shannon, so much for coming and sitting down with us and chatting about creative stuff.
Absolutely. Sure.
Cool. I appreciate you coming over at podcasting from my home and having dinner with us. It's really great that you're here.
It was delicious.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Very nice.
Sharing the food. Yeah, I'm doing it. So I thank you so much. We had a lot of scheduling back and forth about this, and I'm happy about it. You know, you were so sweet. You're like, oh, thank goodness we could get this done.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, I'm so excited that you're working all the time and that you're doing stuff.
Yeah,
and that
well, thank
you're
you.
busy.
Thank you. It's most of the conflicts were auditions that didn't go anywhere, but
Doesn't matter. Gotta do it though.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are is actor the sort of word that you use to describe what you do? You performer? What do you think?
I don't even know how to think about it right now. I think actor is what it's the easiest thing to convey to people what I do, because I do a little bit of different things in the acting sphere that kind of contains most of it.
Right.
I also write, and I'm like, the older I get, the less likely I'm going to have some sort of breakout role that's going to, put me on the path to financial security as an actor.
Sure.
So I've been doing a lot more writing, but that hasn't really, that hasn't taken off 100% really. So actor is probably what I use to describe myself most often creatively. Depending on the context, might be, I'm a voice actor, or I do improv. But yeah, actor kind of contains all of that.
I feel like a lot of people have like very specific, like, this is the word that describes me. Some people get mad at comedian or like performer. I'm like, I'll literally take any word that isn't like, works at an office.
Right. Performer is fine. Comedian, I feel like for one thing, I think like when people say comedian, they automatically think stand-up. So I shy away from that just because I've never done stand-up. Even though a lot of what I end up doing is in the service of comedy, and I'm a comedic actor, but I don't usually say comedian or comic because I think a lot of people just, even if they hear improv, they leap to stand up a lot of the time. Yeah. But if someone called me a comedian or a comic, I wouldn't get angry.
Oh, right on.
That seems a lame thing to do. No offense to all the people who are very particular about how they're described.
Yeah, well, I mean, I right now I think there's a lot of stuff going on in the world about like image and who we are. And
gotta protect
how
your
we
brand,
present
man.
ourselves.
Yeah, right.
Things
ice cream man's coming by.
Legit, that's the third ice cream man today.
I'm
one was
mad at
like
myself
5 minutes right after the previous one, and I wanted to be like, guys, you're neither of you.
They're like cousins, and they've got some beef, and they're like trying to poach each other's territory or something.
NPR one time had an extraordinary documentary about that. It was
about like beefing ice cream men.
Yes, he started his own.
I love it.
Yeah, they would block the cars in and stuff so they could. Yeah, it was great. It was real good.
Ice cream truck turf war. Yeah.
Cut through.
Man, so I guess that means that you really just can freak out about anything.
Yeah.
Between the name people call you and whether or not somebody else can sell ice cream.
In your turf, right? Yeah.
I'm assuming they have real thin margins, and that's why it's a big deal.
Right.
Like 5% margins. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, just the cooling in your car alone. Like, in this town, get out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's like all the food trucks. I'm always like, you guys really love it hot, huh? It's the thing, you're digging it. You're like super psyched about it. You're like, if it could be 150, I'd be happier. Okay. Sure.
Yeah, if I could stand in 112 degrees and then over top of an oven and stove.
It'd be so much fun.
In a small box.
Did I mention I also love falafel? Okay. You're
Good,
in.
you're in. Right, way to go.
You win, Austin. How long have you lived in Austin?
So I moved here in the summer of 2000. So I'm coming up on 18 years.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. It was a very hot dry year. It was very similar to if y'all remember 2010 when Bastrop caught on fire and the drought and everything. It was very similar to that. It was weird. We moved in July, so we just like right into the heart of it, and it was just like, what are we doing?
Wow, have you ever even been to Texas?
I had, and so what was weird is I moved from Las Cruces, New Mexico. So it's the desert. Mm-hmm. It's hot, but it's like, it's very different from here. It's that desert dry heat kind of thing where it's literally 10 degrees cooler if there's shade, you know, because it's the desert. That's not the case here. It's humid enough that it's like, it's everywhere, you know. Yeah. And also in the desert too, like every day, even in summertime, at nighttime, there's no atmospheric cover, and so it cools off a lot. It's like down in the 60s and 70s, even if earlier in the day it was 105. So it was the constant heat that was like, holy, it just doesn't relent, dude.
Yeah, you're like, it's midnight. Is it on?
Yeah, I knew it was like coming back at like 2 a.m. from a show, like, you know, to my car, and I walk like 2 blocks, and it was like dripping with sweat. And it was like, you know, it was like, gee, this is miserable. But anyway, I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me. Temperature doesn't bother me. But it was memorable because it was very hot that summer, even hotter than normal for Austin.
I think it was 114. That was my first summer up here as well in Austin. I just started college, and it was
in 2000.
Yeah, and it was like, ugh, no.
There was something like 60 some days in triple degree heat or something like that. It was like 2 straight months above 100 or something like that. It was really hot. And I moved into this big, it was a house, but it was a rental property. And it was big, old, probably built in the late 30s, early 40s. Mm-hmm. And it only had window units. It didn't have central AC. Right. So those were just like cranking all the time, but they would still only put out so much coolness. Yeah. So there were like zones that you could stay in. You know, you had to kind of weave through. You wore a pattern through the house to stay cool. Yep. You avoid certain pockets because the AC units and the windows wouldn't quite reach. You know, the combination of the one over here and the one over here. There was like a dead zone that was like, you know,
no man's land.
120 degrees no matter what was happening. So, oops.
When I grew up in Boston, and we only had window units. And to be honest,
sure, it's all you probably needed.
We only had a window unit in my parents' room because they would tell us, well, we paid for it, so we get it. And we were like, but it's hot. And like, well, life is tough.
Get a job.
Get used to that. We're like, oh, okay. I see how that works out. But when years later, when my dad got a little older and he was a little bit infirm, they got central air just to contain the house. Mm-hmm. And now people are like, your house has central air? What are you, millionaires?
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous. It's like legit doubled how much the house is worth because no one in the entire neighborhood has central air.
Oh, wow.
Everyone's taxes went up thanks to that.
They were like, this is amazing, look at this, you know.
Right.
It's so wild how it's kind of ubiquitous here.
Right.
Not so surprising, though, that as a first arrival rental, they would have swindled you into a property with just window units. It was
a weird thing, though. We visited, my wife and I visited the spring break. I was in graduate school in New Mexico, and we visited in spring break, and we ran into somebody that we used to know. And this is pre-Facebook, pre-social media, so like you could fall out of contact with people and not really know where they wound up.
I remember it was a great time.
Yeah, and so we went to a play. I was like, one of the reasons we wanted to check out Austin, we knew the theater community was vibrant and cool, and there was a lot of stuff to do. So I was like, let's go see a play, and we went, and we ran into somebody that we had known from before. Selling the tickets to this play. And we're like, what the hell are you doing? You know, What are you doing here? So we got together after the show. We went back to her house, the house that we ended up moving into. And we're like, just like hung out, caught up. We hadn't seen each other in 2 or 3 years. And we're like, and then later we decided we were going to move. We're like, we'll have to come to Austin sometime before we move in July and get an apartment. And about 6 weeks before, maybe 2 months before all that happened, we got a message from her saying, hey, my roommate that I live with here went crazy and bailed and is out, and I don't want to. She's like, it was such a bad experience. She's like, I don't want to live in a place with a roommate anymore. I can't afford to keep this place. Do you just want to take over the lease for us? And we said yes. Yeah. But it was kind of sight unseen. Like, we hung out in the living room, but we didn't really, like, investigate the whole house and, like, ask about the air conditioning setup or whatever.
Or, like, how's the plumbing? What's
how's the plumbing? What's going on?
Drainage, you know.
So we lucked into an apartment without having to do any apartment hunting at all. We I can't remember, we took over the remainder of her lease and then just renewed it for another year after that. But we didn't investigate very hard. It's like, hey, we got a place.
You were in grad school in New Mexico.
Yes.
Where did you go and what did you go for?
So I studied fiction writing at New Mexico State University in Las Cruces for 2 years. So I was there for 2 years. And then New Mexico is I like New Mexico a lot. It's a great place. The food is great. It's beautiful. It's definitely, at least when we were there and in southern New Mexico, it's very much more of a place you retire to than you be a cool, creative young person. There's just not much to do. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, and there's not much to do, and there's not much money for people. Even if you wanted to try to create something, there's just not a lot of
extra spending money going on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, it's like we were in Las Cruces, which is a university town, which is, compared to a lot of places, probably better off. But still, as a community, there's a lot, there were a lot of migrant workers. There's a lot of, people maybe not even with high school educations. Mm-hmm. They're laborers. They work with their hands. They work with whatever. And, like, they're not going to go see some artsy-fartsy, I didn't know improv was the thing, but, like, let's say had I wanted to stay, do some sort of theater project or whatever, there just wasn't enough critical mass there to make something that kind of, to happen, so.
Yeah.
So when you got here, about how long did it take for you to start getting involved in improv and those things?
About 2 months. Like,
2 months?
I basically hit the ground running, partly because the person that we knew, was heavily involved in the theater community here already. So, I mean, and not that she was introduced us to everybody, but it was I already had a connection.
Right.
And I'm pretty tenacious about just inserting myself into situations. So I just would go out to stuff and meet people and, and eventually I started taking improv classes at the very end of 2000, in October, November of 2000. And then I was cast at the Hideout Theater's house troupe, essentially. Right. It was a different setup than it is today, but they had a house troupe, and I was cast in that group at the end of in December of 2000.
That's great.
So I started doing improv shows full time, all the time in January 2001. So.
That's really great.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if it was the Hideout, so I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, it was at the Hideout.
Just be that at that point.
So it was kind of twofold. There were 2 theaters in town at the time, and so I had just missed out on. There was a previous wave of improv in town that I missed out on in the late 90s, and that was a lot of it was centered at the Velveeta Room. They had a house troupe called Monk's Night Out, and a lot of those guys put on this festival called the Big Stinkin' Improv Festival, and they were we want to be the South by Southwest of comedy, and it was it was big. They had industry people here from the get go. They would have Comedy Central and all this kind of stuff. But this is the late 90s, yeah. There's a lot of money kind of flying around and all that kind of stuff. This was before my time, so it had just basically, I got here and all of that was kind of crashing down. I wasn't aware of how that worked out, but the people who were Monk's Night Out and who were kind of responsible for Big Stinkin' Festival, a big contingent of them moved to Los Angeles about the time that I moved here. So they moved to LA. Pamela Ribon is one of them, who's now writing the Wreck-It Ralph 2 movie. She wrote Moana for Pixar. So there's this Austin pedigree out in Hollywood that came out of that scene. They opened this theater called Bad Dog Theater, which is on the corner of Riverside and Congress. It has subsequently been about 25 different things. It's a big, weird warehouse